Welcome back for day 2 of the 100k plate from carco.com.au Raceway.
A big day of racing with Formula Ford, Holden HQs, the street cars, improved production and 3E production cars. We have time challenge, historic touring cars and rounding out a big day with the saloon cars.
Starting off the first race of the day with Formula Ford, and an unfortunate stall from your pole sitter Xavier Henderson caused chaos on the start line.
As we see a replay of the incident on the start line there for Xavier Henderson. Unfortunately for David Richardson, had nowhere to go and unfortunately waxed the pit lane wall.
It was an unfortunate incident that caused the car to be stuck on the main straightaway. That brought out the red flag, halting proceedings on the opening lap and put the entire field down into the pit lane while they could extract the stricken car of David Richards sitting on the sidelines. After a short delay, though, we managed to get back under green flag conditions, and it was all about Mark Redmond immediately getting the jump on the field.
Yeah, fantastic getaway for Mark Redmond there, as we see Brock Brewer coming under attack from Thomas Chapman.
They already started to build a gap, but that margin that Redmond had put on at the restart, getting the jump on everyone, Everly, Josh Matthews and Jason Nude up in the fighting few at the pointy end of the field on that restart. The tricky morning conditions after the early rain during qualifying brought the field into a new phase, trying to find traction.
So we see a spinner up in the background there.
Ava Ananostiadis getting caught up on the exit of turn number 7, unfortunately. She was able to turn the car around and resume racing in the field. Great to see still a contingent of Silverstar cars racing with the Formula Fords, the cars of yesteryear. They can go rain in Formula Free, or Free Formula as you would call it, but they get to come out and play with the Formula Fords.
As we pick up the action at the beginning of the field, it was still Mark Chapman, but a great battle ensuing here with car number 57 of Brock Brewer and Tom Chapman.
Chapman looking at the inside, just missing out at the finish there. It was Mark Redmond running it to the finish line to take the win for race 1 of Formula Fords over Brock Brewer home in second, and Tom Chapman picking up third by the smallest of margins, just over 1/10 of a second at the line.
The fantastic Holden HQs from yesteryear, all back out on the track here at carco.com.au Raceway for their first 8-lap race.
Initial proceedings with Michael Howlett opening up to the race lead over the likes of Ord, Pangler, Russell and Ryan Davis, all tucking into those top few cars. Great to see the HQs getting a strong field of 13 drivers on the entry list, 12 making it to the start of race 1.
As we pick up on our leader, and it was young Michael Howlett, car number 7 from Bo Pangler. And then we go back to the beautiful Aquarius colour car, all the way down from Northern this weekend.
The HQ is just lending himself to the steel bumper old school style of racing. You can still lean on each other just a little bit and have some fun with these cars as well. Fantastic racing put on every single event by the HQ field as they climb the hill. And there's an example of the racing, almost 3 wide, hard on the brakes, down into turn number 7. The 24 car trying to fire it up the inside. And they fought it out for relative position. Todd Faulkner trying to get the job done before he fell back through the field later on in the race to finish an eventual 12th in race 1.
A bit processional out in front of the field, but as Chris just said, the battles back in the pack were outstanding to watch, as Bo Pangler still coming under attack. And a moment for Todd Faulkner in car number 24 there, saw him beached down on the exit of turn number 1.
There's the incident that saw him fall down the order. Finish up 12th. He did get to resume racing, got himself out of the sand trap on the exit of turn number 1 and found himself circulating around carco.com.au Raceway again. The HQ Holdens, look at that lean going through the left-hander as the body roll is an extra that comes with these cars in the modern era. The 62 of Scott Hames going through, fighting it out for position. And there's Faulkner trying to recover after his spin at turn 1. Almost going a lap down at this stage to eventual winner Michael Howlett, who was just unchallenged the entire length of the race.
As they crossed the line, it was all Michael Howlett from Grant Ord and Brian Pangler taking out third.
On to the first race of the day for street cars, improved production cars and 3E production cars. We take a ride on board for the first lap with Jared Carey inside the Nissan 350Z, watching the start of the race and watching the battle already taking off between Aidan Friel, Matt Cherry and Nick Middick right in front.
We take a look at Jared Carey's onboard camera here. You would keep an eye on the steering wheel down there in turn number 6, fighting for every little bit of traction he could, and a great exit out of turn number 6 and up and over the top of the hill.
Great to see Nick Middick in the BMW putting the car through its paces as he fought for track position with Matt Cherry, even fighting over position in the same class. And also the car of Adrian Friel putting on a great show there at A86 Sprinter, tucking in behind. But Cherry putting the horsepower really to good use down the straight.
Great to see the return of Matt Cherry. He's been missing from carco.com.au since about 3/4 of the way through last year, as we pick up on Aidan Friel getting the little Toyota 86 very, very sideways on the exit of turn number 7.
The 444 entry. Jared Carey, who we rode on board for the first lap of the event, holding down second in class. Picking up with Matt Cherry in the Monaro CV8, continued to build the lead in the early stages of the race. Over the top of Nick Middick, back there in second with the BMW, starting to really stretch the legs. And back to Friel further behind as we watch some battles from deeper in the field. A little Honda Civic going at it with the VW.
We pick up on car number 14 of Glenn Malling, and unfortunately for Glenn, a bit of an oil leak as he heading down into turn number 6 would see his retirement.
It's unfortunate there for Glenn, as you can see more evidence of the blue haze out the back of the Holden Commodore, seeing his imminent retirement as he pulls it into the pit lane on the exit of turn number 7 here. And that would be the end of his first outing of the day at carco.com.au Raceway.
Starting to get very dark and gloomy out there at carco.com.au Raceway as we start to see the rain just starting to miss the track, but eventually it became very, very heavy.
So at the checkered flag in street cars, it was Aidan Friel taking the win over Jared Carey in second and Philip Krause in third.
For your improved production, it was all Matt Cherry from Nick Middick and John Caligari.
And in production cars, James Gellan taking the win over Brent Peters and Laurie Whitome in third. On to Time Challenge, a massive field signing up to get out on track and a great way to get involved in non-door-to-door racing on track. The first session, though, very tricky and wet conditions for everyone who went out for the first run.
Because all of these competitors qualified on a dry track, and the wet track in event number 1 really threw the cat amongst the pigeons.
That did result in, unfortunately, ending with a red flag in the session due to cars getting stuck in a small incident on the racetrack. They were able to continue following that and get their first session to completion.
Still pretty tricky conditions out there for our Time Challenge competitors.
The result for Time Challenge event number 1 went to Ryan Appleby over Daniel Callow and Aaron Birmingham taking third.
In the dummy grid area, I don't know what. There wouldn't be any temperature getting into the tyres, I wouldn't imagine, in
Great to see a stellar field of drivers taken to the track in time challenge. Over 20 drivers signing up to go racing. It is truly a great format of racing that you can get involved on race days without the door-to-door competition and racing super hard.
All about being consistent, getting the gear changes right, the right amount of brake pressure at the right time, and just being overall doing the same thing lap after lap after lap.
Great to have the second session out there, taken out by Joshua Mussel over Mike Moreland, and Norm Bromley coming home in third.
Historic touring cars took to the track at carco.com.au Raceway, taking us back to yesteryear, the late 60s, early 70s racing. And it was a great start from Clint Rayner, from Mark Cates in the XY Falcon, and Rod Poglitz out there in the Tirana, just having a little bit of a coming together on the exit of turn number 1 with Mark Cates.
These cars really struggling to come to terms with the slippery conditions after the downpour that happened a little bit earlier in the day. You can see here the Camaro of Clint Rayner just getting all sorts of sideways, trying to come up the hill through the left-hander. The cars of yesteryear struggling on that slippery racetrack.
Typical battles is what we used to see through the 60s and the 70s, and this takes us back to Bathurst in the late 60s with the Tirana battling an XY Falcon. We have a Mini all the way up from Albany, taking on a 350 Chev Monaro of John Bondi. With the Ford Galaxy of Don Behetz blasting past the little Mini, and we'll take that position off him into turn number 1.
Great to have such an eclectic mix of different cars in the historic touring cars range, even old BMWs and alike, making their way around the circuit at carco.com.au Raceway, despite the tricky conditions before the sun did come out and start to make things a little bit easier as it started to dry out and form a nice line, much more suited to how these cars like to race.
Great battle between the Ford and Holden camps as Mark Cates able to hold off John Bondi as we see one of the Vandenright Mark III Cortinas coming to a stop at the exit of turn 4.
Yeah, Paul Vandenright unfortunately out of the race after just a few laps. Some sort of mechanical failure that left him watching the remainder of the race from the sidelines at the top of the hill. This battle continued on though in the fight for second and third between Cates and Bondi. Bondi getting way out of shape coming up the hill in the Monaro. Still struggling for traction despite things starting to warm up and actually get a little bit more grippy on the racetrack. The race was won by over 30 seconds to Clinton Rayner in the Camaro over Mark Cates coming across the line in second and John Bondi picking up third. Into the saloon cars, Pro and Pro-Am both taken to the track at the same time, and the combined start once again proving a favourite amongst drivers and fans alike.
Great start for Michael Holdcroft in the 51 car. Gets off to a good 5 or 6 car length lead over Rick Gill and Robbie Marcom.
You can see the Pro-Am cars buried in the field there, right on the back of the Pro cars, how it should be with your saloon car field as Holdcroft continued to put the 51 entry to work, opening up a healthy lead that looked really unassailable in those first few laps as more moves trying to be made through the field. Chase Hoy looking at the inside, down at turn number 6, trying to pick one up on Mason Harvey.
It's all Michael Holdcroft who would lead lap number 1 from Rick Gill and then Rob Marcom. And the battle still coming down here with Chase Hoy on the inside, gaining another position on the entry into turn number 7 from Mark Watkins in car number 21.
You can see the saloon cars, great door-to-door racing as the Pro-Am class further back. There was a spinner in the field and 2 almost losing out of sympathy on the exit of turn number 7. Drivers still dealing with slightly difficult track conditions. You can see the wet racetrack with a thin, dry line starting to form. There's a big lock up there from Marcon on the entry to turn 1. Dropped him back even further in the race for third.
The young Mason Harvey was the hard charger in race number 1 for our saloon cars, moving forward 4 or 5 positions already as we pick up on Michael Koberstein, the eventual winner of the Pro-Am category.
Koberstein well and truly pouring on the pressure to Craig James in those early stages. Marcon mounted a massive comeback drive to charge past Gill and eventually ended up challenging Holdcroft for the win, diving to the outside over the top of the curving at the run of the checkered flag and just edges out Holdcroft at the line to grab the win by mere half a tenth of a second. Holdcroft back in second and Rick Gill in third for Pro Class.
For your Pro-Am category, it was Michael Koberstein from Craig James and Damien Stevens for third. Formula Ford's out on the track for race number 2, and a fairly even start between Mark Chapman and Brock Brewer in the 57. As they headed down into turn number 1 for the first time, Brewer held out wide and was able to get the ascendancy off turn number 1.
A great start in the opening exchange, Chapman tucking into third, and Josh Matthews making a great run into the first 4 cars as they made their way around the opening lap. Jason Yude firing his way up the order as well. In what was set to be a great battle put on by the Formula Ford competitors, a long field snaking their way over the top of the hill for the first lap, and this battle was immediately on. Brewer opening up a gap over the next few cars behind. Redmond immediately under pressure from Matthews as they came down the hill for lap number 1, moving left and right, trying to cover off for the slipstream.
Some of the most exciting open wheel racing we've seen at carco.com.au Raceway for many years. It was still Brewer that held the lead from Mark Chapman and Josh Matthews.
Great battles all the way through the field wherever you look, but everyone was watching this battle in the first 4. As Redmond, Matthews and Chapman all got together to close the gap to the back of Brewer once again and started to put some pressure on your race leader. Towards the closing stages, Brewer was under threat from Mark Redmond with Matthews right there tucked in for third. But he wasn't to be assailed, and Brewer takes the win for second race of Formula Ford over Mark Redmond home in second and Joshua Matthews claiming third at the line. Into the second race of the day for the HQ Holdens as they get away with a great start on a dry racetrack, greeting them this time around.
On the exit of turn number 1, it was all Michael Howlett from Grant Ord. We go back into P3 for Dennis Russell from Bo Pangler, Scotty Hames and Ryan Davis lifting the wheels up and over the bus stop.
Your lead pair of Howlett and Ord already breaking away even during the opening lap of racing, just in their own league of pace, to switch things on so quickly for race 2 of the HQ Holdens. But the battle pack behind them for second, third, fourth and fifth on the racetrack on lap 1 immediately kicked off a war.
3 wide down the main straight here at carco.com.au Raceway. It was Ryan Davis being able to put a move on Scotty Hames and Bo Pangler.
Great move by Davis down into turn number 1. That moved him up the order, and he set his sights forward but wasn't able to get through as easily as the next cars continued to pounce on them and the battles continued. Even here down into turn 7, you can see Davis at the back of the pack again as the 62 entry.
Of Scotty Hames.
Makes a great run, and Davis fires it back to the inside on the main straight. 3 wide racing in HQ Holdens. That's how you get it done with these steel bumper cars. The continued fighting from this pack of 4, even with a 5th car joining in at the back of the group, allowed the leaders to break away and form their own massive margin as Davis tried to hang it around the outside through turn number 1. Almost getting it done, but eventually losing the spot and succeeding back into the S's.
While this battle was ensuing just in front, Peter Marsh in the orange HQ was able to join on to the back temporarily, but we see some bump drafting happening between Dennis Russell and Ryan Davis as they came over the top of the hill.
You can always lean on the steel bumpers with a HQ Holden. Bump draft in the order of the day to try and get an advantage wherever you can. On the high-speed run down into turn number 7. Davis fighting his way through into 4th and eventually broke free from the pack to grab 3rd, leaving the rest of the 4 behind him to fight over the remaining placings.
So as our leaders come across the line, it was all Michael Howlett from car number 4 of Grant Ward and then Ryan Davis in car 49 for 3rd.
Just ahead of the second race of the day for street cars, improved production cars and 3E production cars, we caught up for a chat with Aidan Friel.
Round 2 of the WA Sporting Car Club Championship for 2023 here with Aidan Friel. Bit of a redemption after last race meet. How are you going this time?
Yeah, not too bad. Had a good quali in the mixed conditions, and then race 1 was yeah, pretty challenging. Yeah, but still good fun.
And out there today in the mixed field, you got IPs, you've got street cars, you got production cars. So how are you guys all going out there all on the same track together today?
Yeah, obviously a few of the improved production cars are a little bit out of my league, you know, he's in the little 1.6 litre, but a lot of the top runners in AP were pretty well matched, but then a lot of back markers that you're overtaking come lap 6, lap 7, stuff like that, which makes it interesting. Obviously bunches everyone back up again, the leaders at the front, so yeah, no, it's good fun.
And where do you reckon you're going to end up by the end of today?
As long as I won street cars, that's all I'm really going for. It's just battling with improved production just makes it a bit more exciting. But obviously I want to be at the front, but I think Matt Cherry and Nick are probably out of my league today, but we'll see. Never say never. I'll give it a go, yeah. All
right, fantastic. I think I just heard you being called out to the grid, so good luck for the rest of the race, mate.
Awesome, thank you. Cheers, boys.
Street cars, improved production and 3E production cars were next out on the carco.com.au Raceway.
A good start there from Nick Middick in the BMW, jumping to the race lead, pumping Aidan Friel, who we just spoke to right before the race, back into 2nd. Caligari out of class, jumping into the 3rd spot as Matt Cherry fought his way through the field. Great to have such a mixture of cars jumping through, and they all get to jumble up between the different classes out on track.
Nick Middick coming under attack from Aidan Friel in the little Toyota 86 as they head down into turn number 7 to reel off lap number 1 here at carco.com.au Raceway.
The big horsepower from that AE86 throwing down on the racetrack. We'll see this again from deep down in turn number 7. Friel gives him plenty of room on the inside of the racetrack to get the move done and cover him back off. But watch as Friel gets on the power and gets all out sideways on the exit of turn number 7. A little bit more tame in the dry than it was in the wet weather conditions, but still a wild car to get a handle of around the track.
Further back in the pack, we find the the ex-Melling car of Edwards being overtaken by Glenn Melling.
Eventually, Caligari managed to find his way past Nick Middick in the BMW as well. Putting the VN Group A SS Commodore to good use with the extra horsepower, able to be properly unleashed on the hilly section as we got this moment that was a bit wild and hairy down into turn number 7. A big moment from Terence Nielsen in the Volkswagen Beetle. Caught a cone going over the top of the hill that locked the left rear hard on her brakes and found himself climbing over the back of Rachel Beers, who at the same time was trying to retire from the race. Everyone very lucky to get away unscathed, and we can all play to fight another day.
We pick up on Aidan Friel in the Toyota A86, making his way through the back markers from Nick Middick and John Caligari.
That was their order on track. Caligari fighting there to 2nd in the outright order as Friel putting that A86 Toyota to really solid use. Plenty of horsepower in this thing. You can even see him just testing the brakes a little bit just to make sure the pads are still there. And as they come across the line in street cars, Friel takes the win over Jarrett Carey in the 350 Z home in second and Philip Krause in third.
For improved production, it goes to John Caligari over Nick Middich and Glenn Melling.
And for your 3E production cars, James Jellin taking the win over Damien Croxon in second and Brent Peters bringing the RX-8 home in third. Much better weather conditions for the second running of Time Challenge. With a massive entry list, we still had to break them up into 2 groups, but great to see them all out on track and thoroughly enjoying their time with much more favourable conditions to have plenty of fun, although someone may want to remind these 3 it's not all about racing door to door.
Big variety of cars dating right back to the early 70s up to a late model Corvette. For event number 2 went to Neville Zuccoli over Mendo Jonseski and Gary Utterson for third.
Time Challenge still a fantastic format to get involved in. If you would like to get involved with Time Challenge with your own vehicle, get in touch with the WA Sporting Car Club and see how you can go racing at carco.com.au Raceway. The second of our Time Challenge groups getting out on track. A slightly smaller field circulating their way around. Only 8 making it out for the second heat after issues brought Rob Mitchell unstuck with his TX3 Laser in the opening exchange.
And it was fantastic to have Mick Moylan back at carco.com.au Raceway after a long layoff.
This beautiful Mustang in the 150. Tony Mickelson putting down the horsepower over the top of the hill. Chasing an eclectic mix of other cars out on track. Some that would fit into racing categories, some that may not. How's a beautiful example of the Ford Escort coming down into turn number 7. A great shot from the 15 entry of Norm Bromley with the Mark II Escort.
So for Time Challenge, your winner was Norm Bromley over Mike Moylan and David Appleby. Race 2 for the historic touring cars for 10 laps here at carco.com.au Raceway. And again, it was all Clint Rayner down into turn number 1 with a hard-charging Mark Cates and John Bondi.
These 3 picking up where they left off from the first race of the day in much more favourable conditions. Things were a bit wet and slippery for the first race of the weekend, but the sun out and shining, a nice warm, dry racetrack, much nicer to try and put the power down with some of these super powerful historic touring car entries.
All of our historic touring car competitors using this round as a warm-up for their appearance at the Repco V8 Supercars.
Great to see some of your competitors a little bit further back, getting 3 wide as they went over the top of the hill on the run down towards turn number 7. No such drama out front though. Rayner putting the horsepower down with the Chevy Camaro to lead out by healthy margin in the early stages over Bondi and then Behetz.
And here comes our 2 Jaguars of Gallagher and Laurie Lapsley, still being pursued by the WA Historic Touring Club chairman in Mike Rowe.
Even a sight to behold in historic touring cars. Regular appearances from things like Blake Watson in this Morris Cooper S having a lot of fun. A different kind of fun for Clinton Rayner though, out there in the Camaro sideways off the exit of turn number 7. Even in the dry conditions, just pumping power out through those rear tyres.
They started to come up on the slower traffic now of Wellstead in a second of our little mini Cooper S's. As again we see Clint Rayner nice and sideways as he greets the checkered flag. He will take the win from John Bondi in second position.
And rounding out in third, Donald Behetz in the 2-door Galaxy coming home to round out your podium.
Saloon cars out on the track for race number 2, with Robbie Marcon getting a good lead down into turn number 1 for the first time from Michael Holdcroft.
Rick Gill and Mason Harvey tucking in there in the battle for 3rd and 4th already. Marcon determined not to make the same mistakes that came him a cropper and put him on the back foot, despite his ability to challenge and come back for the race win by the smallest of margins in race 1. He wanted it a little bit easier on a dry track this time around. The whole field settled in for the battle, all bumper to bumper, glued together as they came hard on the brakes into turn number 7. The Pro-Am field tucking in behind as well. It's still great to see the Pro-Am field right on the back of the Pro cars, sometimes mixing them and diluting the field between the two.
This battle was raging out in front between Robbie Marcon, Michael Holdcroft and young Mason Harvey, really starting to move away from the rest of the pack as they headed down into turn number 7 to reel off lap number 2.
Eventually, Holdcroft losing out on that battle. Harvey jumping up into the 2nd spot. And Holdcroft couldn't quite hold the pace in the dry conditions in the late phase of the race, as we see this battle here between Vince Chilella and Chase Hoy down into turn number 7. And the battle further behind as well. Hoy watching on as cars go 2, maybe even 3 wide over the top of the hill.
A healthy field of saloon cars here in Western Australia, one of the biggest categories we have at carco.com.au Raceway, and indeed anywhere in Australia.
Harvey started reeling, applying the blowtorch to the back of Robbie Marcon towards the end of the race. Gill eventually moving up to the 4th spot, putting down the 21 car of Mark Watkins a spot.
There's a great battle between Sean Arthur out of Bunbury and Craig James as they headed up and over the top of the hill.
Despite the two of them not being in the same effective class, James racing with Michael Koberstein for the lead of Pro-Am. Arthur from the Pro class back there and mixing it up.
And as they crossed the line, it was all Robbie Marcon's, led from start to finish from Mason Harvey and Michael Holdcroft.
In the Pro-Am class, Michael Koberstein taking the win from Craig James in 2nd and Damien Stephens coming home in 3rd. Formula Fords for the final race of their day, getting underway with Brock Brewer leading the field away from pole.
Out into turn number 1, it was Brewer from Mark Redmond. Thomas Chapman. As they headed out through the S's for the first time, with Chapman and Brewer starting to already get away from the rest of the field.
Redmond parking right in the middle there for 2nd as well. Josh Matthews and Jason Yude joining in that battle, with Logan Everly in the 91 entry joining on the back of the pack. This would start to form up for a great scrap in the 3rd and final race of the day for the Formula Fords. The start car there of Jack Sheldon down into turn 7, making the very smart call to dive to the inside grass and park up on the infield for the race. Issues for that car, but he didn't get caught up with the race leaders.
Brewer out to a 5-car length lead at the end of lap number 1, but things started to close up very much, going down into turn number 7 with Mark Redmond taking the lead, with Thomas Chapman still onto the back of the car 57 of Brewer.
Brewer fighting back to the inside line down the main straightaway. This battle would continue on like this for quite some time. Josh Matthews tucking into the fight as well, with Everly and Yude at the back of this 6-car battle pack as they go through turn number 1. Brewer once again got back to the race lead though, putting Chapman back to 2nd, Redmond to 3rd.
Some of the best Formula Ford racing you'll see anywhere in Australia is here at carco.com.au Raceway.
A moment there for Josh Matthews, who was hard on the brakes to not pass under the yellow flag conditions down at turn number 7. Compression lock in the Formula Ford to make sure he didn't get himself into a bit of strife. That put him deep back into 4th, but he didn't give up and set sights for your race leaders, who were still battling between Brewer and Chapman out front.
Things starting to close up at the front there with the laps winding down. A 6-car chain. Any one of these 6 cars could have taken the win here at carco.com.au Raceway.
Run down into turn number 7. Matthews looking to the outside and trying to challenge. And goes around the outside and pulls in front of Chapman to grab second at that point. But no one could challenge Brewer out front. He maintained his race lead from the pole for the entire duration of the race, despite all fights going on around and behind him.
3 other competitors trying to have a crack at Brewer throughout this 8-lap journey, with Thomas Chapman now trying to go around the outside of Brewer into turn number 1 from Redmond in 3rd and Josh Matthews in 4th.
The order so changeable in the final few laps. Chapman, Redmond and Matthews all exchanging places multiple times over the course of the 8-lap race journey. That kept Everly and Yude still in touch to make a complete 6-car battle as they disappear over the hill once again. Great to see the return of Jason Yude in the number 12 entry, a stalwart of West Australian Formula Ford racing. Fantastic to see him back out on track.
The 6-car chain heading up through the S's for the final time. It was still Brewer. Closed up again down into turn number 7 for the last time. Brewer takes the inside line and picks up his first pole position, his first race win, and ultimately first round win for car number 57 of Brock Brewer from Josh Matthews and Thomas Chapman. Holden HQs for race number 3 with a great start from car number 4 of Grant Ord from Michael Howlett and Ryan Davis as they headed down into turn number 1.
The whole field bunched up in the early stages. Davis under pressure for just a moment through turn number 1, but hung it out to the outside and charged up through the S's to try and hang into that spot, eventually going around the outside and claiming 3rd on the run towards the left-hander, leaving the leaders to break away in the early stages. Ord and Howlett glued to each other as they came out of turn 6 for the first time.
A little further back, a great little battle pack with Peter Marsh joining on the back of Scotty Hames and Bo Pangler.
Watching the battles out front, Howlett was determined to try and fight his way to the front, looking at the inside of Ord in a late move on the brakes down into turn number 7. You see Davis watching the move happen from further back, Ord using the extra momentum around the outside to slip back into second, but these two slowing each other up just slightly allows Ryan Davis back into the fight and onto their rear bumper right there in 3rd. Ord fighting back to the inside through turn number 1. Allowed Davis to try and fight his way through, too wide and up over the curbing through the S's. Ryan Davis getting the elbows well and truly out to grab second from Michael Howlett, finding himself being pushed down the order.
Halfway through the race now, and it was still Ryan Davis coming under attack from Grant Ord with Michael Howlett in 3rd. But how was this battle pack behind them with Dennis Russell, Scotty Hames and Peter Marsh?
Pangler buying into that battle as well, as they were staying in touch with your leaders at that point in time. The top 3 slowing each other down and not being able to break away by the margins we've been used to seeing here in the HQ Holdens until a few laps later, and they started to really pour on the times. And this time it was Ryan Davis leading with Michael Howlett pouring the pressure on, going side by side over the top of the hill. Ord watching on in this exchange as Howlett goes for a dive up the inside down into turn number 7.
Ryan Davis not going to lay down and take that move from Michael Howlett, able to get back in front as we go 3 wide with Peter Marsh, Dennis Russell and Scotty Hames.
You can just see the 4-car of Ord shadowing of Michael Howlett. There is this battle for the remaining placings. The 62, Scotty Hames trying to go all the way around the outside on the very extremities of turn number 1 as your leaders went 3 wide over the top of the hill the following lap.
Grant Ord looking for a way through on Michael Howlett and tried it on Ryan Davis, but Ryan Davis able to hold the blue HQ out wide and still maintained P1 as the last lap board came out.
It was on for young and old on the final lap of racing, with Howlett forcing the issue up the inside of Grant Ord for turn number 1, while Ryan Davis held the race lead for the moment up through the S's before they disappeared from crowd's view at carco.com.au Raceway.
As the cars disappeared from sight, it was Ryan Davis over Ord and Howlett, and they remained the same as they came up and over the top of the hill for the first time, with Ryan Davis out to a 1 or 2 car length lead now over Grant Ord as they straighten up and head down towards the checkered flag here at carco.com.au Raceway. Your race winner was Ryan Davis from Grant Ord and Michael Howlett. Street cars, improved production and 3E production cars on the circuit for their last 10-lap event here at carco.com.au Raceway.
A brilliant start from Aidan Friel in the AE86, jumped into the race lead and dragging the Subaru of Kevin Simonson, the 81 entry, up to second on Nick Middick in the BMW. Had to settle for third as a great field of mixed-up cars filters their way around carco.com.au Raceway for the first time. Friel immediately getting to work with that little Toyota, pumping out huge amounts of horsepower to open up a nice, healthy lead.
Aidan Friel in the Toyota A86, moving away from Nick Middick and Kevin Simonson, with Gary Edwards coming down the inside of Jared Carey.
Carey in that beautifully turned out Nissan 350Z. In class for the street cars, having a great day out. We rode on board with him earlier on the day for the opening lap of their first race. Is Nick Middick having a good run in the BMW as well, ever consistent with this beautifully turned out car. That is a sight to behold and a credit to the class, as are a lot of the cool cars in this field.
Well, John Caligari trying to move up through the field, currently in third position at the moment as they crested the top of the hill. But this was a great battle between Simonson and Carey.
Caligari trying to recover from that earlier falter at the start of the race, putting him on the back foot and fighting to try and chase down class leader in the improved production cars of Nick Middick. It's great to see a few more RX-8s on the racetrack. The 80 entry of Laurie Whitome just racing around with Stephen Taylor in the BMW E36 Coupe as they come out of turn number 7. And other really cool combinations, the likes of the Renault Megane, the Honda Civics and the like, and even Ford Focus RSs lining up in the field. We even had the 2 RX-8s getting together with Brent Peters, joining Laurie Whitome for a bit of an RX-8 battle on the racetrack in your 3E Production Car Championship class. As Friel fought his way through the back of the field at the very end and closing up a big day.
The street cars, your winner was Aidan Friel from Jared Carey and Philip Krause.
In your improved production cars, Nick Middick taking the win in race 3 from John Caligari and Kevin Simonson in third.
For your production cars, it was James Jellin from Brent Peters and Laurie Whitome.
Great to have Time Challenge on track for the third and final time today. Still a fantastic field of entrants making their way onto the circuit, split into A Group and B Group as we see A Group get underway with their session. A great format to get involved and get out on the racetrack.
And of course, you don't have to have a full-blown race car to come and do Time Challenge at carco.com.au Raceway. If you're interested in joining the field, make contact with the West Australian Sporting Car Club and they'll give you all of the contact details for Time Challenge. as checkered flag falls, it was Ryan Appleby from Russell Cooley and Jamie Scott.
Well, in Group B for Time Challenge on their third session of the day, Time Challenge also proving as a great opportunity for existing competitors in other race classes to get out on track and get extra valuable race time during race day conditions. Nothing beats the racetrack when it's in the same spec as what you would be racing on, when it's cleaned up by the rubber on the cars getting around the track. If you would see yourself in your vehicle having a ton of fun in Time Challenge, don't hesitate to get in touch with the WA Sporting Car Club to find out how you can get your car on track in Time Challenge.
So as the checkered flag falls, it was Norm Bromley from Tony Mickelson and Mike Moylan.
Historic touring cars heading out on track for their third race of the day. A couple of cars failing to make the starters grid here. Clinton Rayner, Blake Watson, Mark Cates and Robert Poglitz all failing to greet the starter. That would see John Bondi immediately getting a massive lead on the opening lap.
So they came up and over the top of the hill for the first time. Bondi was already out to a good 100 metres over Don Behetz and Simon Northey. The two Jaguar Mark IIs having a great battle as well with Gallagher and Lapsley.
Scott Mackey firing up the inside of the BMW 2002 of Mike Rowe, who started to falter early in the race and was an eventual DNF after just 2 laps in this third and final race for the historic touring cars.
Nobody was going to catch John Bondi, well out in front now of the big 7-litre Ford Galaxy of Don Behetz.
A huge margin further back to Simon Northey in the Mustang, then the pair of Jaguars and the whole field lining up behind as the sun started to descend to the west of carco.com.au Raceway. The two Jaguars putting on a great display of racing and sportsmanship as they fought it out down into turn 1. The Jaguar made famous back in the day by Bob Jane. The roaring 4.7-litre combination of the Mustang coming to life late in the day, as we did have a retirement from Paul van den Rijt in the Mark III Cortina, coming to a slow as they crested the hill. Eventually, Paul would not finish the race, along with Mike van den Rijt in the second of the 2 Mark III Cortinas, both having a DNF within a lap of each other.
As our leader, John Bondi takes the checkered flag, an unassailable lead over Don Behetz in the 427 Ford Galaxy, and then a hard-charging Simon Northey for third.
For the final race of the day, Saloon cars out on track, and a great start from your combined Pro Am field. Robert Marcon fighting to the inside as they fight into turn number 1. Mason Harvey hanging out the outside, trying to hang on to second in the early stages.
Chris Nisi running very, very wide on the exit of turn number 6. Now that's put him under pressure as they headed down into turn number 7.
He was lucky to recover the car and put it back on the racetrack and stay in position. That wasn't the last of the battles for Chris Nisi in this third and final race for the Saloon cars as well. As you can see them fighting for position at the top of your shot as they crested the hill. Your race leaders down into turn number 7, Mark on from Mason Harvey and Michael Holdcroft right there in third.
Bit of an incident coming off turn number 7 with Reg Ralph and Neil Streetfield both taking to the grass on the main straight here at carco.com.au Raceway.
Great piece of driving from Streetfield to recover the car with a massive tank slapper down the centre of the main straight. Got it back on the racetrack and continued to soldier on through this race. we would see quite a bit of overlap between the Pro and the Pro-Am field in this third race, with a few of the Pro cars lingering back and mingling with some of the older generation vehicles.
Marcon out to a good lead halfway through this final event here at carco.com.au Raceway, but Mason Harvey and Michael Holcroft, they were not finished yet.
And Chase Hoy fighting with Chris Neefsey over the top of the hill as they descended down into turn 6. That battle would continue on for multiple laps, as you can see them at the back of your shots. Marcon untouchable out front from the front row of the grid in this final race for the Saloon cars in the Pro class.
Neefsey again under attack, this time from Brock Ralph as they headed down into turn number 7. With Neefsey being able to hold off Brock Ralph as they fired up behind Jace Hoy.
This battle is the class of the midfield in the Pro class. The leader's too far away to make any impact on this race, but some great scraps going on as Holdcroft began to challenge Mason Harvey for the second place in the Pro class. Looking to the inside, down into turn 1, Harvey parking the number 1 machine perfectly on the race line to cover off Holdcroft and keep him back there in third.
Young Chase Hoy trying to make amends for some mechanical difficulties throughout the day. You see him here sitting on the tail of multiple Australian motocross and road racing champion in Rick Gill.
At the checkered flag, Robert Marcon came across the line, but a post-race penalty for failing to make the starting grid in time. 5 seconds for Robert Marcon sees him drop down the order. Mason Harvey takes the win in the Saloon Pro class over Michael Holdcroft in second and Mark Watkins in third. And
for your Saloon Car Pro-Am category, it was all Michael Koberstein from Craig James and Damien Stevens.
That's a wrap on the WA Sporting Car Club's hosting of the 100k plate from carco.com.au Raceway.
Keep an eye on all of the socials and the West Australian Sporting Car Club Facebook page for more action from carco.com.au Raceway.